Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 10 matchup between the Texas Longhorns and the Kansas State Wildcats. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 10. You got two of the top teams in the Big 12 going head-to-head in this matchup. Should make for a good one. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with your team trends. Texas lost to Oklahoma State 34-41 in their last game. That game was a couple of weeks ago, so Texas is coming off of a bye week heading into this matchup, so they do have an advantage there. And they're 5-3 on the season. And facing off against Kansas State. Kansas State shut down Oklahoma State 48-0 in last week's matchup, and that was, so you got two very different results there. You got Kansas State, who just destroyed Oklahoma State. Meanwhile, Texas the week before had lost them by a touchdown in what was a matchup where Texas, they led for a long time. Oklahoma State just was able to steal the lead at the end and get the win. But, Texas at 5-3, I do think Texas is a strong candidate to be the best three-loss team in the nation right now, as this team has, all three losses have come really close. One was in overtime to Texas Tech. One was by a touchdown to Oklahoma State. And obviously, that 1-point loss to Alabama back in Week 2. So, Texas, I feel like this is a team that is underachieving just a bit. I feel like this is a team that's pretty good for their record, and they just taken a couple of brutal losses. But for Kansas State, this team is for real. They are 6-2 on the season. They once again just shut down Oklahoma State. That was just a very impressive performance there for the Wildcats. And this is a team that lost to TCU the week before, who, TCU looks like far and away the best team in the Big 12 right now. The Wildcats have dealt with a couple of injuries. That's something to keep in mind as well. Games will be on Saturday, November 5th in Manhattan, Kansas. So the Wildcats are the home team for this one. Kickoff is 6 p.m. Central. Spread's going Texas by 3 here. So the Longhorns are favored by a field goal heading into this matchup. Over-under is 54.5. And the FPI is also going with the Longhorns here, 61.8%. So despite Kansas State being ranked 13th, despite Kansas State having the better record, and also being at home, Texas is still favored in this matchup. So, it's not a big surprise that Texas is thought of to be one of the better teams with three losses so far this season. Series history: Texas leads at 12-10. They won the past 5 matchups as well. That is something to keep in mind. Is that Texas has overall had a successful history, or at least recently, against K-State. Last time K-State won was in 2016. Stat comparison for this one: Texas is 14th in the nation in points per game. They're 22nd in points allowed, 43rd in passers a game, 38th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they're 87th in passing, 31st in rushing. So this is a Texas team that overall, they're solid on both sides of the ball. Obviously, you got Quinn Ewers, who, when this team has Quinn Ewers, I think they're a really good football team and a team that really has a high ceiling, even though we haven't really seen Quinn Ewers' full potential yet. And obviously the rushing game with Robinson, he's rushed for over 900 yards on the season and 11 touchdowns. You can't forget about him. And defensively, this team hasn't been terrible, allowing 21 points a game. And for K-State, they're 45th in points per game, 16th in points allowed. So defensively is where Kansas State has excelled this season. They're 101st in pass yards a game, 13th in rush yards a game, and then for yards allowed, they're 62nd in passing, 45th in rushing. So the passing game could be better for Kansas State. This team, they got Adrian Martinez, who has been the main starting quarterback. Obviously, Will Howard has been the main quarterback the past couple of weeks for this team because Adrian Martinez has been injured, which is obviously a key factor. But when Martinez is playing, this team is mainly a rushing team, as Adrian Martinez can run the ball very effectively. And it's much different when Will Howard is playing. This team is much more of a passing offense. That is something to keep in mind. I feel like that's something that took Oklahoma State by surprise there. They were probably preparing to have to play a really strong game in the rush defense, but in the end, Kansas State was a very strong team. With a different quarterback than maybe expected. Adrian Martinez, there was an idea that he wasn't going to play against Oklahoma State, but it wasn't for sure, I don't think, until game day. But and we'll find out whether or not he's playing for this matchup. That's obviously a key factor, whether or not Adrian Martinez is playing. But this team did just fine with Will Howard last week. So that makes me not too terribly concerned about the quarterback situation. Recent matchups: Texas lost to Oklahoma State there 34-41, beat Iowa State 24-21, shut down Oklahoma 49-0. That's probably their most impressive win of the season. Beat West Virginia 38-20 and lost to Texas Tech 34-37 in overtime. I mean, if Texas wins that game, even if they do lose to Oklahoma State still, I mean, a 6-2 Texas team, this team is probably still ranked in the top 22, top 20 in this matchup. And as for Kansas State, beat Oklahoma State 48-0, lost to TCU 20-38. That's a game that this team very well could have won had Adrian Martinez stayed in. I mean, I feel like this team would have, especially, I mean, they ended up losing Will Howard as well at some point because he was starting to get injured and he was questionable. So, I mean, that was obviously a messy game with injuries, but this team very well could have beaten TCU there. They beat Iowa State 10-9. They beat Texas Tech 37-28 and beat Oklahoma 41-34. That's the game where Kansas State started to turn heads. Key points for this one: Texas 5-3 once again. I do think this team is better than their record shows, especially when they're healthy. I do think they're the best 3-loss team in the country right now, even though Kentucky is not far behind. This team is very much still in contention to win the Big 12. Once again, the Big 12 is a very fun conference this season in that it is wide open. It could be, I mean, there were a couple of weeks back in late September when it looked like there were 8 different teams that could potentially win the Big 12 title. Now we've kind of narrowed that down to, you could say TCU, you could say Kansas State, maybe even Oklahoma State, maybe even Texas, and Baylor's 3-2 right now in conference as well. So, I mean, who knows? We could potentially see them slide into that second spot. But this is a crucial game. I mean, if you're Oklahoma State, if you're Baylor, you definitely want Texas to win this game just because that brings Kansas State down a bit. I mean, TCU, it seems they're all but a lock. I mean, I feel like TCU is a lock to make it to the Big 12 title game at this current stage, with them being still undefeated heading into November. But obviously, it's a very intriguing conference, and this is a very influential game in the Big 12 race right now. And so this is, I mean, for Texas, if they want to still stay in contention, I mean, this is a crucial game for you, and this is probably a must-win if you want any chances of making it to the Big 12 title game, which is still within reach for the Longhorns, that's for sure. And the Longhorns, this is a team that has got talent. They're an extremely talented team, one of definitely the most talented in the Big 12. We just haven't seen this team's full potential yet, and I feel like, I mean, this could be a game where we could see that, and it definitely come into use, that's for sure. But as for K-State, they're coming off of obviously that dominant shutout victory over Oklahoma State, beating them 48-0. But the quarterback situation is uncertain. Adrian Martinez is a quarterback who's really come around. The Nebraska transfer, he's had a great season with the Wildcats, and that Oklahoma game was really the turning point for him. But obviously he was out of last week's game against Oklahoma State, and he was out of most of the game against TCU. So we'll see if he can be back. Obviously, that's going to be, once again, a key factor in this game because that just changes the offense. I mean, this offense is primarily a passing offense if they got Howard in there, but with Martinez, it's more of a rushing offense, and that's really where this team is strong with Deuce Vaughn, who is an outstanding running back with over 900 yards on the season and 5 touchdowns. I mean, his and Robinson's stats from Texas's top running back are almost, I mean, they're very similar. I mean, Robinson does have more touchdowns, but yardage-wise, both running backs are almost identical through 8 games in this season, and the Wildcats are very much a dark horse contender. This team could very well win the Big 12 title. I mean, you got TCU who's up there, but I mean, Kansas State, keep an eye on this team to potentially make a run. And I mean, for all we know, we could see K-State definitely in a New Year's Six bowl game come the postseason. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Texas and Kansas State coming up here in Week 10 of action. And I'm going to go with K-State to get the win. 31-27 is the predicted final score. And this would be considered an upset because Texas is favored in this game, despite Kansas State being ranked 13th and at home for this game. But I do think Kansas State comes through and gets the win. I mean, once again, we'll see what happens with the quarterback situation, whether or not it's Will Howard or Adrian Martinez. But I am confident that Kansas State being at home and the way that they've been playing recently, I mean, this is a team that I'm confident can definitely win this one. And I mean, something to mention too, I mean, Texas defensively, they are strong in the rush defense, but not so much in the pass defense. That is something to keep in mind. Texas is allowing nearly 250 passers a game. So for all we know, with Will Howard, the way he's been playing, maybe keep him in this game for Kansas State and let Adrian Martinez heal fully. I mean, that's something to consider here for Kansas State, and I feel like this team is going to be okay no matter what. and no matter who is playing at the quarterback position. So I'll say 55% towards K-State, over under 54.5. Give me the over for this one, and Kansas State to cover the spread in the end, which is currently 3 points towards Texas. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more. All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.